I slept with 3 men and had my first ever orgasm aged 56. Chapter 1 of a 6-part story of woman's journey to sexual fulfillment. Chapter 1: Discovering Desire. Johanna had always been one to defy conventions. From a young age, she carved her own path, eschewing societal expectations in favor of her own happiness. Yet there was one area where she felt she had always been trailing behind: her sexuality. Even at the ripe age of 56, she had never experienced an orgasm. It wasn't that she hadn't tried. Indeed, she had had her fair share of partners and liaisons, but none ever brought her to that fabled peak. On a sunny afternoon, she found herself sitting in a cafe across from her old friend Lisa, who was bursting with a newfound sense of vibrancy and joy. Lisa had always been more adventurous, and her recent exploits made Johanna envious and curious in equal measure. They had met to exchange pleasantries and catch up on their lives, but Johanna couldn't help but steer the conversation toward the topic that had been burning in her mind. "Lisa, you seem different," Johanna admitted over her half-empty cappuccino. "It's like you found some kind of secret elixir of life." Lisa chuckled and leaned in, her eyes twinkling with mischief. "Joe, I've rediscovered something marvelous," she confessed. "Sex." Johanna blinked, a blush creeping up her cheeks. She had expected an adventurous trip or maybe a new job, not this. "You're telling me sex is your secret?" Lisa nodded, a knowing smile playing on her lips. "Not just any sex, mind you. I mean satisfying, mind-blowing sex. I mean orgasms." The word hung in the air between them, bold and defiant. Johanna felt an unfamiliar stir in her heart, a blend of curiosity and longing. She'd read about orgasms, heard whispered tales of its earth-shattering power, but it had always seemed like a myth, a tale spun to sell romantic novels. "And you believe I can experience this at my age?" Johanna asked, her skepticism evident. Lisa responded with a firm nod. "Absolutely, Joe. Age is just a number. It's about exploring your own desires, understanding your body. It's about finding the right partner, or partners." Johanna left the cafe that day with a tumultuous whirlwind of thoughts. Could she really embark on this journey, chase this elusive pleasure at her age? Would it not be awkward, a tad too late? But as she pondered, she found herself drawn to the idea. A missing piece of her life suddenly seemed within reach. She had a respectable job, a lovely home, a son who was grown and out of the house. She had time and a newfound curiosity that was becoming harder and harder to ignore. She decided then and there she was going to chase that peak, explore the contours of her desire, and discover what it felt like to truly embrace her sexuality. That night she sat in front of her laptop, her heart pounding in her chest as she typed out the words, "How to have an orgasm after 50. The search results filled the screen, an overwhelming array of articles, guides and resources. Yet she didn't feel daunted. Instead, she felt a thrill she hadn't experienced in a long time. The thrill of embarking on a new adventure, a journey of self-discovery and pleasure. And so her quest began. This is chapter 1 of a 6-part story. The next chapter is chapter 2, the erotic education. I slept with 3 men and had my first ever orgasm aged 56. Chapter 2 of a 6-part story of woman's journey to sexual fulfillment. Chapter 2: The Erotic Education. Johanna's subsequent days were spent engrossed in a variety of resources, delving into the intricacies of female pleasure. She absorbed books on sexuality like The Elusive Orgasm and Come As You Are, pored over articles detailing anatomy and arousal, and filled her nights with sex-positive podcasts. It was a form of education she'd never experienced before, one that brought a new understanding of her body and desires. Her newly learned knowledge was put to practice with a bold decision. With her heart pounding in her chest, she ventured into a women-led boutique and bought her first ever vibrator, a sleek, subtle device that promised waves of pleasure. She named it Apollo, the Greek god of sun, light, and truth. The first time she used Apollo, Johanna felt a surge of self-consciousness. Her breath hitched as she pressed the power button and felt the device hum to life. Yet as the vibrations pulsed against her skin, she felt a warmth spreading through her, a sense of intimacy she'd never experienced before. With every subsequent self-love session, Johanna found herself growing more comfortable, more in tune with her body. She began to understand what touched sparked pleasure, what tempo worked best, and what fantasies fueled her desire. There were moments of frustration, of doubt, but there were also moments of ecstasy, of tantalizing pleasure that left her yearning for more. In her exploration, she discovered a lot about herself. She discovered that she enjoyed slow, sensual build-ups, the anticipation of pleasure often as satisfying as the act itself. She discovered that her body was a masterpiece of sensitivity, with spots she never knew could bring her so much joy. She discovered her own voice, the power of expressing her desires and needs. Johanna's erotic education became a journey of self-discovery, of owning and celebrating her sexuality. She felt empowered, liberated, but she also felt a growing anticipation, a desire to share this newfound joy with another. And so, the next chapter of her journey began, one that involved not just herself, but others as well. This is chapter 2 of a 6-part story. The next chapter is chapter 3, Meeting the Men. I slept with 3 men and had my first ever orgasm age 56, chapter 3 of a 6-part story of woman's journey to sexual fulfillment. Chapter 3, Meeting the Men. Over time, Johanna found herself yearning for companionship, a desire to share her newfound self-awareness and sexual joy. The thought of involving partners in her journey sparked a blend of apprehension and excitement within her, but she was ready. She had the desire, the knowledge, and most importantly, the courage. The first man she met was Richard, a charming poet she met at a local bookstore. He was soft-spoken and thoughtful, his words as beautifully woven as the verses he penned. Richard made her feel understood, seen. He had a knack for asking the right questions, for listening attentively, and for expressing his thoughts eloquently. His kisses were slow and tender, like the poetry he loved. The second man was Thomas, a playful chef she met at a food festival. His eyes sparkled with joy, his laughter infectious, his passion for food palpable. Thomas was adventurous and spontaneous, whisking her off to try new cuisines, new experiences. He made her feel alive, full of excitement. His kisses were passionate and explorative, like the exotic dishes he created. The third man was William, a mature painter she met at an art exhibit. He had a captivating sense of calm about him, a wisdom that only comes with age. William appreciated beauty in all forms and made her feel like a masterpiece waiting to be discovered. His kisses were slow and sensual, like the strokes of his brush. As Johanna started developing these bonds, each man offered her a different shade of intimacy, a unique blend of affection, and a tantalizing promise of pleasure. Yet, she was careful not to rush. She knew her journey was about understanding her desires, her pleasure. It was about embracing her sexuality, and the men were merely companions, not guides. The path to her climax, she knew, was one she had to tread herself. To each man, she disclosed her quest of self-discovery and sexual exploration. Richard, the poet, listened with understanding, his eyes reflecting respect for her journey. Thomas, the chef, responded with enthusiasm, encouraging her exploration with his characteristic optimism. William, the painter, appreciated her honesty and reassured her of his support, his gentle words like strokes of comfort. Each relationship unfolded gradually, a slow dance of mutual attraction, respect, and consent. Their connections were not solely about sexual intimacy, but were deepened by shared interests, engaging conversations, and emotional bonds. This journey was not only about the destination, her elusive orgasm, but also about the path she was treading and the companions she found along the way. Richard introduced her to the world of literature, to the art of weaving emotions into words. Their evenings were often spent in the comfort of his cozy library, exploring narratives that ranged from love and loss to desire and pleasure. His gentle touch and soft-spoken words stirred a sense of deep emotional intimacy in Johanna. Thomas, with his culinary prowess, brought her senses alive. He would invite her to his kitchen, letting her taste the exotic dishes he concocted, their flavors an aphrodisiac to her taste buds. His playful nudges, impromptu dances, and passionate kisses made her heart flutter with excitement and anticipation. William offered her a serene companionship that was comforting in its own unique way. He would often sketch her, his eyes studying her with a gentle intensity that was both exhilarating and comforting. His unhurried touch, his soft praises whispered into her ear, they all added to her growing self-awareness and appreciation of her own body. As she navigated these relationships, Johanna learned to assert her needs, to communicate her desires. Her newfound knowledge about her body and her sexuality became the cornerstone of these intimate moments. There were hesitations, there were stumbles, but there was also understanding, support, and growing desire. Johanna had her companions, her self-awareness, and a growing understanding of her desires. Her journey, she knew, was far from over. It had in fact just begun. This is chapter 3 of a 6-part story. The next chapter is chapter 4, A New Romance. I slept with 3 men and had my first ever orgasm, aged 56. Chapter 4 of a 6-part story of a woman's journey to sexual fulfillment. Chapter 4, A New Romance. Richard was the first with whom Johanna explored a romantic relationship. There was something about his tranquility, his poetic charm that attracted her. He had a way of making her feel seen, making her feel special. Their connection transcended beyond shared interests, evolving into a deep emotional bond. Their first intimate moment happened one evening in his library, amidst whispers of classic romance and the soft glow of the fireplace. They sat close, their hands gently intertwined, as Richard read aloud verses from a sensual poem. Their shared silence was filled with anticipation, an exciting promise of things to come. Richard's touches were soft, explorative, akin to the verses he adored. He moved with respect and understanding, cherishing her body like a sacred verse. His kisses ignited a flame within Johanna, a flame that had been kindled by her own self-exploration. As Johanna gave herself to these moments, she felt a building wave of pleasure, a thrill that she had only experienced alone. But the climax remained elusive. dancing just beyond her reach. She felt frustrated, but Richard was patient, reassuring her that pleasure didn't always mean an orgasm. She found solace in his words, his understanding. Next came Thomas, with his fiery passion and playful demeanor. Their connection was spontaneous, unpredictable, and exhilarating. From savoring exotic dishes to indulging in impromptu dance sessions in his kitchen, every moment with Thomas was a new adventure. His touches were like the spices he loved, exciting, enticing, and bold. He kissed her passionately, a masterful chef tasting his favorite recipe. Their connection felt physical, raw, and thrilling. There were moments when Johanna felt on the edge of an orgasm, the heat of the moment threatening to push her over, but it remained just out of reach, a tantalizing promise yet to be fulfilled. Finally, there was William, the painter with the wisdom of age and an eye for beauty. Their connection was serene, profound, filled with mutual respect. William's studio became their haven, a place where he admired and sketched her, the soft strokes of his brush mirroring his gentle touches. He kissed her like a man appreciating a work of art, slow, delicate, each touch filled with admiration. Their intimate moments felt calming yet exciting, a beautiful contradiction that only added to Johanna's desire. Johanna's journey continued through each man, her anticipation growing with every intimate encounter. But even as she cherished these connections, these shared moments of pleasure, she knew she hadn't reached her climax. It was there, within her reach, an exciting pinnacle she was determined to experience. She looked forward to the next chapter of her journey, hopeful and eager for the transformative moment she was seeking. This is chapter 4 of a 6-part story. The next chapter is chapter 5, Broadening Horizons. I slept with 3 men and had my first ever orgasm aged 56, chapter 5 of a 6-part story of a woman's journey to sexual fulfillment. Chapter 5, Broadening Horizons. Johanna's exploration of intimacy, sexuality, and self had so far been a journey of anticipation, connection, and discovery. She had drawn closer to her ultimate destination, her first orgasm, yet that final, tantalizing peak remained out of reach. It became clear to Johanna that her pursuit was about more than the mere physical act. It was about understanding, embracing, and asserting her desires. The companionship of Richard, Thomas, and William had been instrumental, providing diverse perspectives, affections, and experiences, each contributing to her growing self-awareness. Richard, the poet, brought softness and understanding. His gentle touch, his attentiveness, his respect for her journey all made their intimacy a soothing dance of desire. He welcomed her guidance, skillfully integrating her expressions of need into their shared moments, crafting an experience that celebrated her journey. Thomas, the chef, was a whirlwind of adventure and spontaneity. His zest for life translated into their intimate experiences, his touches as daring as his culinary creations. He took her expressed desires and added his unique flair, creating an explorative dance of passion and playfulness. Their connection was electrifying, their moments together vibrant and full of life. Then there was William, the painter. His tranquil presence, his appreciation for beauty, and his wise patience added a serene rhythm to their shared experiences. In the safety of his studio, surrounded by portraits of her journey, Johanna found a space that welcomed her evolving self. His touch mirrored the gentle strokes of his brush, painting a sensory masterpiece that celebrated her growth. In the pursuit of her climax, Johanna realized the importance of communication, guidance, and assertiveness. Each man provided a different canvas for her desires, and she was the artist, painting her pleasure with broad strokes of self-knowledge and specks of growing confidence. This is chapter 5 of a 6-part story. The next chapter is chapter 6, the climax. I slept with 3 men and had my first ever orgasm, aged 56. This is chapter 6, the final chapter of a 6-part story of a woman's journey to sexual fulfillment. Chapter 6, the climax. The aftermath of her first orgasm was a euphoric wave of tranquility and satisfaction. As Johanna laid basking in the afterglow, a deep sense of fulfillment and accomplishment coursed through her. She felt a beautiful unity of body and mind, a complete understanding of her desires, and an immense gratification in having achieved what she had embarked upon. In that silent moment, as the soft light from the window played on William's canvas, Johanna saw more than her bare self painted with delicate strokes of admiration. She saw a woman who had embarked on a journey of self-discovery, who had navigated through the maze of societal norms and personal apprehensions, and emerged on the other side victorious and radiant. This was not just about her achieving an orgasm, but about her claiming her right to pleasure, her right to understand and embrace her sexuality. The connections she had forged with Richard, Thomas, and William, though diverse, had one thing in common. They were all based on mutual respect, consent, and understanding. Each relationship served as a stepping stone on her path, guiding her towards understanding her body and desires. Richard, the poet, introduced her to the world of emotional intimacy. His gentle touches, kind words, and understanding nature were akin to the verses he penned, filled with depth and warmth. Thomas, the chef, brought his exuberant energy and creativity into their relationship. The kitchen for them was more than just a place for cooking. It was a space for playful interactions, spontaneous dances, and shared laughter. His touches were as vibrant and eclectic as the dishes he served, adding a dash of spice to their intimate moments. William, the painter, had a calming influence. His admiration for her body, his patient understanding, and his ability to create a safe space for her self-expression had given her the courage to voice her desires, to guide their intimate dance. Johanna found herself evolving from the shy woman apprehensive about sex into a confident woman comfortable with her sexuality. She learned to communicate her desires, to assert her needs, and to enjoy the intimacy she shared with her partners without guilt or hesitation. She discovered that her pleasure was not just about reaching an orgasm, but about the entire journey, the anticipation, the build-up, the shared moments, and the eventual climax. But her journey was far from over. She was only at the beginning of a long and exciting exploration of her sexuality. The society she lived in may still view women like her, women of her age, as being past their sexual prime, but Johanna knew otherwise. She had discovered her sexuality later in life, and she now had a world of pleasure to explore. The conversations about sex, once hushed whispers between friends, were now candid discussions about her experiences, her journey. As she moved forward, Johanna knew that there were many more orgasms to experience, many more aspects of her sexuality to explore. She was looking forward to embracing this new chapter in her life, to continuing her exploration of her desires, and to redefining what pleasure meant for her. At 56, Johanna had experienced her first orgasm, but it was just the beginning of her journey. Empowered with self-knowledge, confidence and courage, she was ready to embrace her sexual awakening, to break the barriers and norms, and to celebrate her pleasure without hesitation. This is Chapter 6, the final chapter of this 6-part story of a woman's journey to sexual fulfillment. Please subscribe to the Romance Diaries on YouTube to hear more stories like this one.